their names. Let's see if we can go through this a little bit. That name Adam is pretty straightforward. That comes from Adamah, which means man. No problem with that one. He's followed by a son by the name of Seth. The word Seth means appointed. And how do we know that? Because Eve tells us that in the previous chapter. Eve said when he was born, "For God hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew." And you all know about Cain and Abel. Everybody asks me, where did Cain get his wife, right? He married his brother's sister because he was able. Thought I'd help you with that, right? All right, we'll move on. He has a son by the name of Enosh. Now, this is a heavy name to go around with. The word Enosh means mortal, frail, or miserable. Can you imagine having him on a sports team? Hey, miserable, you're on our team. You know, it doesn't really work, especially in school, I imagine. Okay, and it comes from the root, anash, which means incurable. It's usually used of a wound or grief or woe or sickness, something like that. Canaan now, not Canaan, Canaan is can mean sorrow, dirge, or elegy. Don't confuse it with Canaan. Balaam in Numbers 24 develops a pun on his name. It's another whole story. But Canaan means sorrow. These are pretty heavy names, miserable and so forth. So when Canaan has a son, he decides this enough's enough. So he names his son, when he's born, a mouthful but a wonderful name, Mahalalel. And Mahal, which means blessed or praised one, and El, the name for God. Mahalalel, kind of hard to pronounce, but what a great name, quite a contrast to his elders. The blessed God is what his name means. He names his son Yared, and there's a story behind that I'll spare you here, but the name Yarad, which simply means shall come down. And that may have a connection with Genesis 6, but that's a whole another story. That brings us to Enoch. We've mentioned already, but what does the word Enoch mean? It turns out that Enoch is an academic phrase which means commencement, or in more narrow, teaching. Enoch suggests teaching, if you will. And then, of course, he has Methuselah, which I've mentioned means that Muth and Shalak really mean his death shall bring. The year that Methuselah dies is indeed the year the flood came. That brings us to Lamech. Now, here's a case where the root word is still in our English language. And we see it evident in the word English lament, or lamentation, if you will. In the Hebrew, the word Lamech suggests despairing. Fair enough. Now, Lamech has a son by the name of Noah. And he's derived from Nacham, which means relief, to bring relief or comfort. And we know that from his father, mentions that. Lamech says in chapter 5, says, he called his name Noah, saying, "This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed." Okay, so here's our genealogy now. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Yared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. That's a rough way they might pronounce it. Let's translate it with what we've learned. Well, Adam means man. Seth, appointed. Enosh, mortal. Canaan, sorrow. Mahalalel, the blessed God, shall come down, teaching that his death, whose death? God's death, shall bring the despairing comfort or rest.